Thousands of years ago, there was a prophecy. This prophecy told of the people who were to murder in cold blood the most loving and selfless person to have ever lived, Jesus Christ. The great irony of this prophecy is that those very same people who were to go on to murder the Son of God were the very same people who at the time of Christ were the most powerful and influential religious leaders of that very same God. And this is what the prophecy said, told from the perspective of God himself. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. Are you someone who thinks that Christians are nothing more than judgmental hypocrites who either impose human rules upon others to get their own way, and or people who simply follow rules because they cannot think for themselves? Unfortunately, across biblical history, and most certainly in our modern age, there have been many Christians who have gotten it wrong. There have even been many times when people or groups in power in the Christian faith have gotten it very wrong. And by it, I mean the answer to this one very simple question. What does it even mean to be Christian? This is the question we will be tackling today on Hot Girls Love Jesus. If you're already a Christian, then maybe you think that this is a stupid question with an obvious answer. But you would be wrong. Because asking ourselves the question, what does it really mean to be Christian, is not only something that we should at least once in our lives seriously deeply consider with far more intention than ever before, but something that we should be asking ourselves weekly, if not daily, as believers of God. Because I love bringing in a little bit of philosophy and science into all of the Hot Girls Love Jesus episodes, what we will be doing today when we're asking a question so simple, such as, what does it even mean to be Christian? The method we are actually using is the Socratic Method. And this refers to any time in a philosophical discipline particularly, where we're asking a question that is really simple, such as, what is love? Or what does it mean to be good? But unpacking that very simple question that maybe seems obvious at the surface until we get to a deeper truth that was underlying it all along. And so that's what we'll be doing today. But first, just a brief disclaimer of why I think that answering this question is so important, no matter where we are in our faith with God. For one, if you're someone newer to Christianity, who is simply exploring it, curious about it, or wanting to learn about it, then it is essential that we answer honestly and thoughtfully, and as accurately as we can, what it means to be Christian, because it serves as such a central representation of what we are literally all about as a religion. So if you want to figure out for yourself, is Christianity for me or not, or if you just want to get a fair understanding about who Christians really are and how they live their lives, and of course, it is an essential first and foremost question to know. What does it even mean to be Christian? Now, on the other hand, if you are already Christian, then it is just as much, if not more essential, that you understand very clearly and very accurately what it really means to be Christian and live out your faith, so that you can reflect on regularly whether or not you really are living your life in line with the teachings of Jesus. Not only for your own sake, but also because if you are someone who publicly calls yourself a Christian, then all of the actions that you do are going to be a reflection of the faith as a whole. So it's important that we're representing ourselves well and accurately and biblically, especially in a cultural and political climate like today's, where there are already so many negative stereotypes about what it means to be Christian. So let's get into it. Contrary to popular belief, being Christian does not mean blindly following some ancient book and pretending to be righteous while judging everybody else. But it also doesn't mean just performing the acts of going to church, reading the Bible, or praying to God, or observing specific religious holidays or rituals. It is far deeper than that. But further so, it also doesn't mean just believing in Jesus for the sake of getting to heaven when you die, or avoiding hell, but still living however you want in the here and now. Not at all. Being a Christian quite literally means one thing and one thing only: following the model of Jesus Christ. Now, you may hear that and be like, okay, well, yeah, duh, that sounds pretty obvious to me. Of course it means that. But I challenge you, if you do call yourself a Christian, how many of your everyday words, actions, and even thoughts are truly in line with the way that Jesus lived out his life? How many of Jesus's teachings do you implement on a moment-to-moment basis, irregardless of how often you go to church or how often you act out certain religious principles, or even what you say you believe in theory? Because, newsflash, it doesn't actually matter how much you read the Bible or go to church if you aren't actually living out a Christ-like existence in your day-to-day life. So, to break it down, being a Christian at its core means following the model of Jesus Christ. And in order to be a true follower of Christ, and therefore to be a true Christian, it only requires two things. The first is that you know so fully and so clearly who Jesus was, how he lived his life, what his thoughts were, his actions were, his words were, how he went about the world around him, how he treated those around him, and what kind of decisions he would make if he were in that same situation you were. Luckily, we get access to many, many of these answers, perhaps not all of them, but enough of them to flesh out who Jesus really was in his heart, mind, and soul by simply picking up the Bible and reading specifically the Gospels, which tell very fully the story of Jesus's life and teachings. Therefore, studying the Gospels and the Bible until you can understand so very clearly who Jesus was and how he lived his life, every single one of his teachings is the very first and absolutely essential part about truly being Christian. Now, this isn't to say that if you don't know by heart and memory every single teaching Jesus ever spoke, every single word he ever said, every even deed he ever did, means that you're not a Christian. But I am saying that maybe you should start there and become as completely well-versed as humanly possible if you're going to call yourself a Christian. Reading through the Gospels is a very small portion comparatively of the whole Bible. And reading through at least Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John until you understand so completely the full picture of Jesus and the model he gave us, it may even take you 1 week to do so. But read them, reread them, and reread them again. Because the better we know who Jesus was, gets us that much closer to the very first step of actually being a Christian in the first place. Now, step number 2 of what it really means to be a Christian is practicing what we preach. Now that we have all of that juicy knowledge of who Jesus was, what he stood for, and how he guided us on how to live, we need to actually live it out every single day and every single moment. Because all of that knowledge, all of that biblical understanding, wisdom, and even memorization truly means nothing if we're not using it to shape and guide our hearts, minds, and acts. Studying the Gospels can be perhaps a little bit monotonous, depending on who you are and who you ask, a little bit boring or a little bit intellectually difficult, but it is nothing in comparison to what it looks like to go about the world around you and have to face all of the struggles every day of how do we act? How should I behave? What is the right step forward? Who am I becoming and who should I try to be with no guidepost? So I would actually say truly living out the teachings of God is hard, but attempting to do so is easier than having no guidepost at all. Yet still, of course, Jesus was perfect for a reason. So really the hardest part of all is living a life of Jesus. As it happens, Jesus was perfect. He always did the selfless thing. He always loved others as himself. He always trusted in God. And being perfect is really hard. So I'd like to clarify that what it means to really be Christian isn't necessarily living out a perfect life of Jesus, but it's the striving to. It's the having the wisdom and awareness to know how you should behave in a certain moment, as well as the courage and the willpower and the obedience to do it and act it out in real time. So though, of course, no person is ever perfect and no Christian is ever perfect, If we can do an amazing job at attempting to act out this lifestyle and do it wholeheartedly and truly and honestly to the best of our abilities, then that is definitely what it really means to be Christian. As Jesus calls us to, we must deny ourselves and take up our cross daily to follow him. Luke 9:23. Luckily enough, each and every day of our entire lives, though, is an opportunity to be more Christ-like, to learn more about who Jesus was through Bible study and reflection, to attempt to become more like him in every moment and situation, to truly be someone who loves God, someone who loves others, and someone who loves ourselves so fully, so generously, and so peacefully, just as God intends us to. Now that we have our clear and fleshed out understanding of what it really means to be a Christian, let's return to that prophecy we read at the beginning. And now look at the longer passage in the Gospel of Matthew. We read in Matthew, "Then some Pharisees and teachers of the law came to Jesus from Jerusalem and asked, 'Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders?' Jesus replied, 'And why do you break the commands of God for the sake of your traditions? You nullify the word of God for the sake of your tradition. You hypocrites! Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules.'" As much as traditions and rituals and rules can be an integral and often helpful aspect of our faith, they mean absolutely nothing at all if we are not living it out. No amount of church attendance can save you there. Being a true follower and disciple of Christ is far more difficult than we give it credit. And it's even infinitely harder than the mere struggle of getting yourself out of bed on a Sunday to go to church, to love our enemies, to dispel any and all anxieties we could ever have, to give up every single one of our material belongings we have in excess. That's hard. But it is also rewarding beyond our wildest dreams. In pursuing this feat of living a life modeled off of Jesus Christ will be one of the most strenuous but rewarding feats of our whole lives. But come along with me and we'll do it together. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Hot Girls Love Jesus. I have so much more to share with you guys, and we'll be posting more regularly, I promise. I'm even thinking of starting up an ASMR Bible reading series. I don't know if anyone would be interested, but if you are, let me know. And I'm also thinking of making some merch because personally, I love the idea of a trucker hat or a t-shirt that says Hot Girls Love Jesus on it. So again, I don't know, but let me know if that'd be cool. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for watching. Bye.